I got a question from a listener after one of my last episodes, and this email was kind of in two parts. Well, maybe three, I don't know. This is kind of why I went back to the old storytelling format here on the journey with you guys. The listener says, I'm new to the journey, and I heard you say something about share care time. I was wondering if you could take a minute and tell me more about that. P.S. I love the cast. I'm also wondering if you have any other tips on keeping my front porch clean. And I love the accent. I always get I love the accent. And so about that accent, by the way, I mean, a lot of you guys know where I'm from, and I try to hide that accent the best I can, that my dialect here on the podcast, because I know a lot of you guys are not listening in the deep South where I'm recording from. So I try to do a good job on that because I know it might be hard to understand me otherwise. But first, thank you for the email and the feedback at scott@planetproductowner.org. I love the questions and the topics that you guys send, so keep that coming. It reminds me of a time that I kind of created this whole concept of share care time, what I call, and I'm sure I'm not the one that created it. I just utilize it, right? I'm just latching onto something that works and improving it as I go. But I had a sponsor that was hard to get a hold of. Could never get time on the calendar. Couldn't seem to schedule time. It was always blocked. I would send an email. And of course, we have to send emails and chats or whatever so that we get some documentation on the responses, right? I understand that. But that's the tool. And so sometimes it would even get to the point where we had delayed responses. So it was kind of keeping me from moving forward on what it was that we needed to do. Sometimes maybe even no response at all. So if you're struggling with that, this is the episode for you. I had this happen to me in the past with not just one, not just two, several, right? And so the moment that I realize that I'm not getting that feedback, I have to kind of take a step back and ask, why am I not getting the feedback? So what I did was set up what I call the share care time. And so this is 30 minutes a week. And you can even send out the invite for 15 minutes a week. It doesn't matter. You know, the amount of time that you send is not as important. It's just that you have it on a periodic basis. It's respecting each other's time. And we know what to expect out of this thing. So here's what happened. And here's what I learned. When I set this up and it was agreed upon that we would meet for 15 minutes a week, I began to realize the story through empathy, right? I'm becoming more empathetic and we're building the relationship with each other because we're just two people talking at that point, right? And so while what I had going on in one instance was a priority and we wanted to focus more on that, and that's what I thought we were headed down was that focus and priority, but it turns out that this particular sponsor's focus was turned and changed because of other things that were going on. And so here I was just thinking that mine was the only initiative in the bucket for this sponsor. It turns out it wasn't. And there were more stress put on this sponsor for other things that were coming out. And it's not that she or he didn't have like the focus on it necessarily. It's just that their focus was being split. And so I also found out that, you know, through some of my share care time with some sponsors is that someone had just adopted 3 kids. And one of them were special needs and had one that had a father who was sick or a mother who was sick. And there was a ton of pressure outside the work, right? It just impacted the professional life. And it's not to say that the work was being interrupted by it necessarily. It's just managing what we could, right? And given circumstances and additional pressures and constant scope of budget debates and, you know, a larger initiative that may be gaining some traction and priority. All of those are stress drivers, right? And so the perception was that there was a lack of focus on what I was doing. And what I have to realize is that it's not necessarily about what I am doing all the time, because as we well know, particularly in larger organizations, priorities change. No, that never happened. Scott, shut up. So in the end, this empathetic approach to the relationship building became really valuable for me. And I was able to understand what was going on, not just with this initiative, but other initiatives as well, whether it be work-related or not. And I found some commonality with some of the family things that were going on, or some of the traction from the other priorities, or some of the hobbies that the others enjoyed. So this relationship building technique was just a channel for us to work with to make sure that we were still increasing this feedback loop time that we had and reducing the cycles on the feedback loop time. So weekly, we get together on this. And so this is a perfect way. A lot of times I'm like, oh, Scott, how do I walk out the values of the Agile Manifesto? How do I apply that? Well, this is one way that you can do it. Remember the value we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Well, my process was to send out a weekly email to follow up with a status report, essentially. It was using green, red, and yellow highlights all over the body of the thing to show where we were. And, of course, the tool was emails. And so I found out that when we do, in fact, value individuals and interactions over those processes and tools, that we have much more benefit. And this share care time was just a tool. It was just a channel for me to make sure that I was putting that value over the processes and tools. And so maintaining your share care time with your biggest sponsor or stakeholder is one of the 6 keys that I'm going to cover with you of being an effective product owner or product manager. And what you'll do is just host that time. Basically do a show and tell with them of what the team is currently working on. Make sure you're on the same page with what's next, and talk about any impediments or even emerging ideas that are coming soon. Now, you'll have all the information, the support, and the alignment that you'll need to be successful as long as you're honoring this time. So, like I said, it's hard to get feedback from email sometimes. It's hard to really understand things when somebody's just typing it or texting it. That's why I prefer not to text my kids when we really need to talk about something, because it could be totally taken out of context, right? Now, just remember, this is with your biggest stakeholder or sponsor for your main focus or initiative, and it's not to say that you don't have more than one at a time. And it doesn't mean that you can't ever invite anybody else. It is a one-on-one time, but I like to reserve the first segment. Like, for example, if we had 30 minutes, I'm going to have the first 15 minutes for just that one-on-one time for us, so that we can get a plan for whoever else it is that we need to invite in the second half of our time. So if we agree we need another partner, like somebody from compliance or governance or UR operations or technology, I'll send an invite for one of those times, but it'll always be the second half of our time so that we precede that and get on the same page. You may even agree that you don't need to keep that time, and that's cool too. It's a channel. It's just a tool for us to use. And going back to that previous key to success, which was that personal backlog time of yours, it's on the calendar. And it supports this idea of having your own ideal calendar, because it's time that you got to spend on valuable stuff. You got to spend your time on valuable things. One of those most valuable times that you've got to have is your backlog time. You have to make sure that you're honoring and respecting that personal share care time in your personal backlog, right? To make sure that you're getting the product goals and product vision elaborated. So again, this share care time basics, right? You're telling them what you're doing, you're telling them what's next, and getting, confirming or affirming the positive, right? And then you're asking them if there are any changes to anticipate. Tell them what you're doing, right? If they want to see it, you can show them, of course, because you're the product owner or product manager, and you're not waiting until the sprint demo, right, to see the work. So you should already have credentials logged in to check this thing out and show them. And then you tell them what's next. And a lot of times you've already covered these, what you still feel like is next, and they're going to tell you what's changed, right? Or if there are any emerging priorities or conversations that are being floated around. Because remember, you're not privy to all that information. Now, if you like a more formal session, here's what I recommend for you, because you may not have that relationship yet. And if you just want to get started, maybe this is a good professional way to start, right? I use what I call the IDEA format. The IDEA format, IDEA, is inform. So there's some information we need to share. After that, there may be some decisions that need to be made. And you may already know the answer, but you want to get their buy-in. So have them help you decide on what decisions need to be made. The next is E, escalate. So what needs to be escalated? What kinds of impediments do we have? Do we need to facilitate the removal of any of those? And then finally, the A is for act. What is our walking away game plan here? What do we need to do before the next time we meet? So inform, decide, escalate, and act. That's that idea format for those of you just getting started. If you don't feel comfortable with saying, hey, we're going to have a quick, tell them what we're doing, tell them what's next, and ask if any changes, this might help you get started in that. Now, I've told product owners and scrum masters, for that matter, that you don't want to be the bottleneck. So I'm getting to the last part of the email and the question here. I think one of the things you want to defend against is being a bottleneck, because that is one way you're going to find your front porch to be dirty. If they say, well, we're waiting on so-and-so, or we're waiting on the product owner, or we're waiting on the product manager to make a decision here. Well, not all the times that decision is with you. We understand that in a large organization, right? And so that's one way you're going to find your front porch to be dirty. Your front porch is going to be dirty if you are becoming the bottleneck. And so if we're practicing these frequent feedback loops and making sure that we are actually responding to change and not reacting to change, then we're not only walking out those Agile Manifesto values, but we're also improving our practice and becoming a better product owner and product manager, because we are actually valuing individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So that's just one way to walk it out. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you guys have too. Please, again, send me some feedback at scott@planetproductowner.org. Tell me what's working for you. Tell me what you like about this and what you hate about it. I'd love to get your feedback here. So until next time, have a safe and fun, lean journey, my friends.